Welcome back. This is Elisa Ruffin with Leading Educators, and you are on the Grade 11 ELA Unit 6 video series. This is Week 10 and Lesson 45. Yesterday, we continued our analysis of the text The Man to Send Rain Clouds, doing a rereading and review of our annotations from our first and close reads. We also responded to some reflection questions and crafted some alternative dialogue to reconsider and reimagine how the characters could have interacted. Today, we're going to move on to our analysis of the craft and structure of the text. Remember, when we analyze craft and structure, we take off our reader's lens and put on our writer's lens to examine some of the decisions made by the author and techniques used to make the story and the plot unfold the way in which it did. Remember that when you are finished with today's activities, you are going to be sharing your learning with a family member, caregiver, or friend, completing the weekly fluency activity using a page from the text, and do an additional 20 minutes of reading today from a text of your choice. Also remember that it is that time of our lesson where we do our riddle of the day. We are continuing our 4 picks, 1 word activity where I present you with 4 images and you try to figure out what 1 word is the common thread that connects them all. So now's the time to gather those people who may be scattered in the home and bring them back to the computer here or to the TV here, wherever you're watching, and to try to decode and solve this riddle. If you are doing this because you like the personal challenge, then now it's the time to clear your mind and prepare yourself. Are you ready for your images today? Here they come. If you don't want a hint as to how many letters are in the word, then now's the time to pause because I'm going to give it to you. Ready? This is a 4-letter word that these 4 images have in common. What do you think? The answer: fast. All 4 of these images reflect the idea of fast. Did you get it this time? All right. Remember, this is going to get increasingly difficult as we progress through the remainder of the lessons, but I know that you are up for the challenge, not just for this riddle, but for the task for today. So let's make sure that we have our materials so that we can meet that challenge, shall we? All right. You need the Man to Send Rain Clouds text. You need your learning packet. Turn to Week 10, Lesson 45 in the corresponding note catcher. You need a pen or pencil to write with, and a smartphone or mobile device is optional in case you want to access the text digitally. A brief reminder of the background of the text. Remember, this is the author Leslie Marmon Silko, and this text in particular focuses on the colonial relationship, the historical colonial relationship between the Spanish Catholic Church and the Pueblo community. And we always point out that this doesn't happen. This is not set during the time in history where the colonial relationship began. However, these individuals are likely descendants of the original groups who interacted with each other. Also, remember that our essential question for the unit, what do stories reveal about the human condition, is something that you need to keep in the forefront of your mind because it will continue to come up as we unpack the text. And the guiding question, what role does power and authority play in the human condition, is also something that you've addressed so far in our analysis that may come up again as well in some additional work. Your learning target for today: I can explain how the author's use of third-person point of view helps develop the plot, characters, and themes of the story. So again, we are doing analysis of craft and structure, meaning that we're taking off that reader's lens and putting on that writer's lens. And point of view is one of the techniques that the author uses to create a sense of tone, to advance the plot, to determine what information the reader receives or doesn't receive, to build suspense or tension, irony, etc. So we're going to examine just exactly how point of view is used and the overall impact that it's had on the reader today. Remember, we engage in the read, think, talk, write routine. And so you are going to be skimming through the text again, reviewing some of your annotations. And then you're going to be thinking about the question, how does the author's use of third-person point of view help reveal the tension between the 2 cultures? And what insight do you have as the reader that you would not have if the story was written from only one character's point of view? Okay. Then you're going to engage in a conversation with a family member, caregiver, or friend about the question, what point of view do you prefer a story to be written from? And explain why and provide some examples. Then you're going to move on to the right section today, where you're going to provide examples to your responses to the think question answers. And I will model for you the type of thinking that you need to engage in to respond to those questions. And then you're going to close by identifying another object or event in the story that could serve as a symbol. So if you recall from your previous lessons, we talked about holy water as a symbol, and you discussed what you thought the implications or the meaning of that symbol was in the context of the story. Now you're going to choose another either event and or object in the story that could also be viewed as symbolic, and explain why you chose it and justify your choice using evidence from the text. But first, let's move on to analyzing further the mantis and rain cloud. So moving on to the think section here, the two questions are as follows. How does the author's use of third-person point of view help reveal the tension between the two cultures? So points of emphasis here: third-person point of view and this idea of tension. So remember that point of view is the perspective from which a story is told, right? Third-person point of view is the particular perspective where the narrator is just an observer and is not a part of the action. All right, so the third person narration piece means that this is not a character in the story, just kind of a distant observer. So you're only getting facts from the outside, not as a character involved, intimately involved in the action of the story. Okay. And tension, remember we talked about the idea of tension, otherwise known as conflict, exists when two characters are having competing desires, expectations, feelings, etc. So we're trying to look at how does the author's use of this idea of point of view related to the narrator as observer, so standing on the outside of events, help us as the reader to better see the tension between the two cultures. So I need to think about the impact that the narrator as observer, or I can also say narrator as witness, helps me better see, understand, and feel the tension. And I can think about a time when I was an observer of a tense moment. So this is one way that you can bring in a personal experience to really help you respond to this question. So think about a time where there were two people. They weren't necessarily arguing, but they had differing interests or different points of view. And you're just watching. You're not a part of the conversation. You're just watching it go on. And so therefore, you can see the actions taking place, the reality around them. You can actually hear both people's points of view as an outside observer and really get to see both sides and how you felt being kind of that third person observer. Did you feel the tension? Did you see the tension better because you weren't yourself in it? All right. So that's one way that you can think about approaching this question and really understand how point of view can impact how tension is revealed in a text. The second question, what insight do you have as the reader that you would not if the story was written from only one character's point of view? You've tackled this question before with other texts, so you're going to apply that same thinking to this one. So you're going to think about the information that you do know because of the fact that it's third person point of view, because you're dealing with a observer or witness position. In other words, you can see all of the action happening, right? And the information you get there. And then also think about how that point of view may be limited in that what information don't you have or insight don't you have because you're not getting the perspective or the story from the actual people involved in the story. So from one of the characters such as Leon or the priest or even Teofilo. Okay. So think about what you gain and what you lose based on the point of view that's chosen. So this gets at this idea again of point of view being a choice that an author makes in order to move the plot along, in order to reveal a theme, in order to create tension or suspense, etc. All right, so it is a literary craft choice. So that's how you're going to approach the think questions for today. When you move on to the right section, you're simply going to use your responses to the think question and then provide examples to support your answers, right? So evidence from the text, and that is where you're going to record it in the right section. So you're not simply giving an answer. You always have to anchor that answer with examples from the text. So you're going to put that in the right section today. And then closing, you're going to identify another object or event that could be seen as a symbol that represents the theme of the story. So by now, you can go back to your exercises from previous lessons that specifically had you calling out what the theme was, right? So you had to identify the ideas or overall messages of the story, The Man to Send Rain Clouds. And based on those one-word brainstorms of the overall theme you came up with, think about other objects in the story that could also symbolize or reflect that theme, or actual events in the story that could embody or reflect that theme. So that is how you're going to respond to that closing activity for today. And you're going to explain your choice and record it in the note catcher. So don't simply write down a one-word symbol or a description of the actual event, but also provide some logic behind why, or reasoning behind why you chose this particular alternative symbol as well, using your understanding of theme and the overall message. Remember that you've already discussed holy water as symbolism. So you've had some practice, and just make sure that you're doing any other object but that. Okay. So it is your turn now to read, think, talk, and write. So remember to think about those two questions and take some time to really consider them. Come up with your responses and make sure that those responses are shaped by examples from the text, because inevitably you're going to have to write those examples in the right section. And then make sure that you have that conversation with a family member, caregiver, or friend about what point of view do you prefer a story be told from. So keep in mind what you know and what you don't know as a reader based on the point of view that an author chooses to write from. Okay, and whether or not you find yourself having a preference when you engage in a story, whether it's short stories like we've been reading or the reading that you've been doing on your own. Do you prefer first person narrative where, for example, the narrator is actually the character in the story, so you get to know that character's thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and motives? Or would you prefer kind of a third person point of view where you have an observer or witness to everything and you can see what's going on from an outsider's perspective, but maybe it's limited? So there's all sorts of different perspectives that you can take here. What is your preference? And you're going to make sure that you talk about that and provide reasoning. And then finally, you're going to close by making sure that you are selecting an object or event that could be seen as a symbol and represents the theme of the story. And you're going to explain your choice and record it in your note catcher. If you have any additional questions or you get stuck, remember you can pause and replay the video as many times as you'd like. And if necessary, you can reach out to a teacher for some additional support using the information provided. Always remember that when you are done with your activities for today, you're going to share your learning with a family member, caregiver, or friend. You're going to complete the weekly fluency activity using a page from the text and do an additional 20 minutes of reading a day from a text of your choice. We've come to the end of another lesson, and we will see you back for the next lesson.